read the Infiltrators' testament. They called me the Archivist of Certainty. For 14 years I maintained the operational records of the Officio Assassinorum's deployment logs in subsector Callidus, cross-referencing target dossiers against authorization protocols, verifying kill confirmations against asset expenditure matrices, cataloging every sanctioned death with precision that earned 3 commendations from the Divisio Immortalis itself. I believed every word I transcribed. I believed the targets were threats. I believed the Emperor's hidden blade struck only the guilty. My name is Theron Vale, 3rd Archival Administrator of the Callidus Temple Supply Annex. And I want you to understand something. Before I tell you how they do it, how they infiltrate fortress worlds and penetrate void stations that could withstand siege warfare, I was proud of my work before I understood what it enabled. The archive existed in Level 17 of the Temple Administrative Complex on Mordia, maintained at precisely 12 degrees Celsius to preserve the parchment and data. Wafers that documented 3 centuries of operational deployment. The cold was intentional, medicinal, a reminder that death itself required sterile conditions. My desk occupied the northeastern corner where the luminators cast steady light across worn oak surfaces that predated the current Imperium. I arrived each morning at the beginning of the 4th hour, logged my entry in the attendance register with the same motion I had performed 4,192 times, and began processing the previous rotation's kill confirmations. The work followed liturgical precision. Each dossier arrived sealed with the temple's own wax imprint, opened only in the archive's sterile environment where contamination of records was impossible. I would read the target designation first, then the authorization chain, then the operational parameters. Asset deployed, infiltration methodology, time to completion, confirmation signature. My role was to verify these elements matched, to ensure bureaucratic harmony existed between intention and execution, to prove through documentation that every death served the Emperor's design. The priests taught that the Assassinorum existed as humanity's surgical instrument, removing threats too subtle for the Astra Militarum, too entrenched for the Inquisition's direct intervention. I processed an average of 11 confirmations per day. 11 human beings erased from existence with such efficiency that the paperwork arrived before the blood dried. I took pride in accuracy. When discrepancies emerged between deployment authorization and kill confirmation, I investigated with methodical devotion. If the target's name contained variant spellings across documents, I corrected the records. If the authorization matrix showed incomplete signature chains, I flagged the file for review. The system demanded perfection, and I delivered it. My supervisor, Adept Helena Krast, a woman whose augmetic left eye clicked and whirred when processing data, slate information, told me during my annual performance assessment that my faith made my work flawless. She said this while reviewing my accuracy rating of 99.7% across 4,300,000 processed characters of text. I believed her. The 0.3% error rate haunted me for weeks. The archive held silence like a living thing. The only sounds were the scratch of stylus on parchment, the soft, pneumatic hiss of atmospheric regulators, and the occasional footsteps of other archivists moving between filing sections. We rarely spoke. Speech introduced error, distraction, the possibility of misunderstanding sacred data. I preferred the quiet. It allowed contemplation of the work's importance, meditation on my role in the Emperor's grand design. During rest intervals, I would walk the archive stacks, running fingers along spines of record, volumes bound in black leather, feeling the weight of documented necessity. Each volume represented approximately 200 confirmed eliminations. The archive contained 7,412 volumes. I did not calculate the total. That would have been irreverent, reducing holy work to mere arithmetic. My daily routine included verification prayers. Before opening each dossier, I recited the litany of righteous discernment, asking the Emperor to guide my eyes toward truth, my hand toward accuracy, my judgment toward his will. After processing each confirmation, I spoke the prayer of necessary sacrifice, acknowledging that the target's death served humanity's survival. These were not empty recitations. I meant every word. The Imperial Creed teaches that mankind stands moments from extinction, that enemies surround us on all sides, that only eternal vigilance and ruthless action preserve our species. The Assassinorum embodied this philosophy. Where others hesitated, they acted. Where mercy would breed weakness, they delivered strength. I was honored to document their service. The meals in the administrative complex followed strict schedule. Breakfast consisted of reconstituted protein paste and wafers at the beginning of the 6th hour. Lunch brought vegetable broth and corpse starch rations at the start of the 13th hour. Dinner, which I consumed alone in my habitation cell, offered the same components with the addition of vitamin supplement tablets that tasted of metal and chalk. The repetition comforted me. Routine meant stability, predictability, order. These virtues separated civilization from the howling chaos that consumed worlds beyond the Imperium's light. I ate with gratitude, knowing that countless billions across the galaxy starved while I received guaranteed sustenance. My work earned this security. I would not squander it through complaint or dissatisfaction. The first wrongness appeared on the 17th day of the 4th month of my 14th year of service. I remember the date because it coincided with my name day celebration, a minor observance marked only by an extra prayer of thanks during morning devotions. The dossier arrived in standard format, sealed with proper wax, logged correctly in the intake register. Target designation Alaric Ven, Subsector Governor of Terminus 4. Authorization Inquisitorial Conclave, Ordo Hereticus, suspected demonic corruption. Asset deployed Callidus operative. Designation Morphine 17. Infiltration method polymorphine transformation into target's personal confessor. Time to completion 43 days. Confirmation target eliminated, subsector stabilized, asset recovered without complication. I processed the information with standard procedure. Referencing the authorization signatures against the temple's validation matrices. Confirming the inquisitorial seal matched archived examples. Verifying the asset designation corresponded to active deployment rosters. Everything aligned perfectly. The dossier should have moved directly to permanent filing. But I noticed something while transcribing the operational timeline into the master ledger. The infiltration date was listed as the 9th day of the 2nd month. The authorization signature was dated the 27th day of the 2nd month. 18 days after infiltration began. I checked 3 times, assuming transcription error on my part. The dates remained unchanged. The operative had deployed before authorization was granted. I sat at my desk for 17 minutes without moving. The archives cold-pressed against my skin. My breath formed small clouds in the sterile air. I told myself there were logical explanations. Perhaps the authorization had been granted verbally, the paperwork delayed by bureaucratic processing. Perhaps the date referred to formal documentation rather than operational approval. Perhaps temporal anomalies during warp transit had confused the chronology. I generated 12 possible explanations, each more complex than the last, each requiring assumptions about circumstances I could not verify. The simplest explanation refused consideration. That would mean the deployment occurred without authorization. That would mean the target died based on suspicion rather than confirmed heresy. That would mean the system I documented with such devotion contained fundamental flaws. I filed the dossier according to protocol. I did not mention the discrepancy to Adept Crast. I told myself I was being overcautious, that my obsession with accuracy had created problems where none existed. But that night, lying in my habitation cell, listening to the complex's atmospheric processors cycling humid air through recycling filters, I could not stop thinking about Governor Venn. What had he done to warrant assassination? The dossier listed suspected corruption, not confirmed heresy. Suspected. The word acquired weight I had never noticed before. How many of the confirmations I processed daily carried that same qualifier? How many targets died on suspicion rather than evidence? I began reviewing archive dossiers during rest intervals, telling myself I was conducting quality assurance, maintaining the archive's legendary accuracy. I selected files at random, pulling volumes from different years, different subsectors, different asset classifications. I told myself I was looking for similar chronological discrepancies, that I would find none, that the Venn case represented an isolated anomaly. I told myself many things during those next 8 days. Most of them were lies I constructed to avoid facing what I was actually discovering. The pattern emerged slowly, reluctantly, like infection spreading through healthy tissue. Of the first 20 dossiers I examined, 4 contained timeline irregularities. Asset deployment preceded authorization by days or weeks. Of the next 30 dossiers, 9 showed similar problems. Some authorizations arrived weeks after the target's confirmed death. Others contained signatures from inquisitors whose service records indicated they were off-world or deceased at the time of signing. 3 dossiers listed the same inquisitor's authorization for targets on opposite sides of the subsector, signed on the same date at the same hour. Unless the inquisitor possessed teleportation technology unknown to the Mechanicus, the signatures were fabricated. I tried maintaining my rationalization. Perhaps the authorizations were copies, duplicates created for archival purposes after verbal approval. Perhaps the dates reflected when documentation entered the archive rather than when approval was granted. Perhaps I misunderstood the authorization protocols, that my 14 years of experience had somehow failed to teach me the actual procedures. But I had written those procedures. I had revised the authorization matrix during my 7th year of service, implementing improvements that reduced processing time by 17%. I knew every requirement, every step, every validation checkpoint. The dossiers I was examining failed those requirements systematically. On the 26th day of the 4th month, I discovered a dossier that shattered my remaining certainty. Target designation: Cardinal Matthias Kern, ecclesiarchal representative to Subsector Synod. Authorization: Officio Assassinorum, internal affairs. Suspected corruption compromising operational security. Asset deployed Eversor operative. Designation Wrath 13. Infiltration method: direct assault during private devotions. Time to completion 4 minutes. Confirmation: target eliminated. Location sterilized. Asset recovered with moderate damage requiring rejuvenation protocols. The authorization came from internal affairs, not the Inquisition. This violated fundamental doctrine. The Assassinorum existed as the Imperium's hidden hand, answerable to the High Lords of Terra and the Inquisition, never acting on internal judgment alone. The purpose of external authorization was to prevent the temples from becoming death cults serving their own agendas, to ensure checks and balances existed even for humanity's deadliest instruments. Internal affairs handled administrative disputes, resource allocation, training protocols. They possessed no authority to designate targets. Yet Cardinal Kern died on their word alone, his death documented with the same bureaucratic precision as any other confirmation. I researched Kern using the archive's reference materials, pulling news, slate transcripts, and ecclesiarchal records from auxiliary filing. Matthias Kern had served the ecclesiarchy for 47 years, risen through merit and devotion, authored 3 theological treatises on faith in times of hardship. His record contained no censures, no investigations, no hint of corruption. The only controversy in his career involved a doctrinal dispute with the Officio Assassinorum, chaplaincy regarding spiritual preparation of assets before deployment. Kern had argued that assassins retained enough humanity to benefit from confession and absolution. The chaplaincy disagreed, maintaining that assassins transcended conventional humanity through augmentation and conditioning. The dispute remained unresolved when Kern died during his private devotions, eliminated in 4 minutes by an Eversor operative who materialized in his secured prayer chamber despite guards, locks, and active security servitors. I understood then what I had been avoiding. This was not corruption. Corruption implied deviation from proper function, malignant actors subverting righteous systems. What I was discovering was design. The Assassinorum deployed assets based on institutional convenience, eliminating anyone who questioned their methods, challenged their authority, or threatened their operational independence. The authorization protocols existed as theater, bureaucratic performance that created the illusion of oversight while changing nothing. My work, my 14 years of meticulous documentation, served to legitimize this performance. I was not recording justice. I was laundering murder. The archive became oppressive. The cold that had felt medicinal now felt like death itself, the sterile temperature of the mortuary. I continued my work mechanically, processing confirmations with the same motions I had performed thousands of times. But now the words carried different weight. Target eliminated. Operational success. Confirmed neutralization. Each phrase represented a human being erased from existence based on criteria I could no longer trust. How many were guilty? How many died for convenience, for institutional protection, for political necessity? My accuracy rating of 99.7% suddenly appeared grotesque. I had documented mass murder with pride in my precision. I began examining infiltration methodologies during night hours, when the archive stood empty except for servitors conducting atmospheric maintenance. The question that haunted me was how they accomplished it. How did assassins penetrate defenses designed to stop armies? The operational dossiers contained detailed, after-action reports, technical analysis of infiltration methods, lessons learned for future deployments. I read them with growing horror, understanding that the Imperium had perfected institutional murder to a degree that transcended military necessity. The Callidus temple specialized in polymorphine infiltration, using forbidden alchemy to transform operatives into perfect physical copies of target associates. The process required samples from the impersonation subject, genetic material combined with psychic imprinting to copy mannerisms, speech patterns, unconscious habits. Most dossiers described operatives infiltrating as servants, advisors, bodyguards, people with access but not intimacy, whose presence raised no questions. But some files detailed deeper infiltration, operatives becoming family members, spouses, children. One dossier described an operative replacing a target's daughter for 18 months before executing the termination order. 18 months of living with a father who trusted implicitly, loved without question, shared confidences and vulnerabilities. The report noted that extended deployment caused psychological complications requiring 3 months of reconditioning. The psychological complications received 1 paragraph. The target's death received 7. The report's author expressed satisfaction that the operative maintained cover until mission completion despite deteriorating mental stability. No consideration was given to what it meant to inhabit another person's life for 18 months, to destroy trust so completely that even memory of genuine love became weapon. The dossier treated this as operational challenge, problem of asset maintenance, success measured by completing the kill before the operative's mind fractured completely. The Eversor temple favored direct assault, deploying operatives transformed into living weapons through biochemical augmentation and psychosurgery. These assets possessed no subtlety, no deception, only overwhelming violence. The dossiers described them infiltrating through sheer speed and ferocity, moving too quickly for conventional defenses, killing everything between entry point and target location, then escaping before coordinated response could form. One report detailed an Eversor operative eliminating a target inside a fortress monastery surrounded by 300 Space Marine aspirants in training. The operative breached the outer wall using melta charges, traversed 800 meters of defended corridor in 90 seconds, killed the target in his meditation chamber, then fought clear through 17 separate engagement zones before extraction. Casualty count among defenders 40, 7 dead, 90, 2 wounded. Asset casualties: moderate structural damage to limbs, severe stim depletion, complete psychological collapse requiring termination and replacement. That final phrase appeared in 12 other dossiers. Complete psychological collapse requiring termination and replacement. The Eversor conditioning broke minds systematically, transforming human beings into disposable weapons that lasted 3 to 7 missions before destruction. The reports discussed this with the same tone used for describing equipment maintenance cycles. Assets represented resources to be expended efficiently. Their humanity was engineering challenge, biological substrate requiring modification and management. When conditioning failed and the operative's mind shattered beyond reconditioning capability, the solution was termination, not medical discharge, not attempted recovery. Elimination of damaged resources followed by replacement with fresh assets. I found the training protocols in auxiliary files, referenced but not detailed in operational dossiers. The documents described selection criteria, psychological profiling, augmentation procedures, conditioning methodologies. I read them in my habitation cell, smuggled from the archive against every regulation I had followed for 14 years. The selection process targeted specific psychological types. For Callidus recruits, high-functioning sociopaths with acting ability, individuals capable of inhabiting false identities without genuine emotional attachment. For Eversor assets, aggressive personality disorders, individuals with reduced empathy but controllable through external stimulation. The protocols described this as efficiency measure, selecting raw material best suited for purpose. What happened to recruits who failed to meet standards? The protocols contained a section titled Resource Disposition of Insufficient Candidates. They were not returned to their previous lives. They were not assigned alternative duties. Insufficient candidates received memory alteration and deployment as servitor-based stock. The explanation offered was security, preventing potential leaks of classified information. But the efficiency was obvious. Failed recruits represented investment in selection, acquisition, preliminary processing. Converting them to servitors recovered partial value from sunk costs. The section included cost-benefit analysis demonstrating that servitor conversion provided better return than simple termination. I thought of the servitors maintaining the archive's atmospheric systems. How many had been candidates for the temples? How many remembered fragments of lives they would never return to? Thoughts echoing through lobotomized minds unable to form complete consciousness. The servitor I passed each morning while entering the archive had been there for my entire tenure, its augmetic eyes tracking movement without recognition, its tools welded directly into arm sockets where hands had been. I had never wondered about its history. It was equipment, infrastructure, no more worthy of consideration than the illuminators or recycling filters. The scale of what I was discovering accumulated like geological pressure. I pulled case files across decades, examining deployment patterns, target selection, operational justifications. 40% of targets were designated as suspected threats rather than confirmed heresy, suspected. That word appeared everywhere, justifying elimination based on possibility rather than evidence. A subsector governor suspected of independence from central authority. A merchant fleet commander suspected of profiteering during wartime. A planetary defense coordinator suspected of insufficient zeal. All eliminated with the same clinical precision, their deaths documented with passive voice that obscured agency. Target was neutralized. Threat was eliminated. Operational success was confirmed. Some dossiers contained victim statements, transcripts from interrogations preceding assassination. These were rare, reserved for targets whose elimination required information extraction first. I read 3 such transcripts during one long night when sleep proved impossible. The first was a planetary administrator suspected of embezzlement from tithe shipments. The interrogation transcript showed her maintaining innocence across 6 hours of questioning, providing detailed accounting records demonstrating proper resource allocation, naming 3 different audits that confirmed her handling of funds. The interrogator's notes stated, "Subject maintains cover story with admirable consistency. Recommend termination proceed as authorized." She was executed 19 hours later. The audit records she referenced were never examined. The second transcript documented interrogation of a regimental commander suspected of cowardice. He had ordered tactical withdrawal during an orc invasion, preserving his regiment rather than holding an indefensible position. The interrogation focused on his decision-making process, searching for evidence of cowardice versus strategic judgment. The transcript revealed careful military reasoning, analysis of force disposition, calculations of casualties avoided through withdrawal. The interrogator concluded subject demonstrates strong rationalization of questionable decisions. Termination authorized under suspicion of moral weakness. The commander died with his reputation destroyed. His strategic judgment reframed as character failure. 3 months later, the position he had abandoned fell to the orc advance despite reinforcements. His withdrawal had preserved the only intact regiment in the subsector. The third transcript was different, shorter. A Medicae researcher suspected of heretical experimentation. The interrogation lasted 47 minutes. The researcher answered every question directly, showed no signs of deception, explained that her work on rejuvenation protocols had been approved by her facility's Mechanicus liaison. The interrogator's notes stated, "Subject unaware her research director has been flagged for potential tech heresy. Termination of associated personnel required for thorough asset sanitization." She died never knowing her crime was proximity, that her work was acceptable until her supervisor became suspect, that her elimination served bureaucratic completeness rather than actual threat assessment. I reviewed 73 dossiers containing interrogation transcripts. 49 showed targets maintaining innocence throughout questioning. 27 provided evidence supporting their innocence. All 73 were executed. The interrogations existed not to determine guilt, but to extract information and create documentation suggesting due process. The outcomes were predetermined. Authorization preceded investigation. The system operated with clockwork certainty, eliminating designated targets, regardless of evidence discovered during operational execution. During the 3rd week of my private investigation, I found files that changed my understanding of everything. They were archived in a restricted section I accessed using administrative credentials, technically beyond my clearance. Security in the archive was designed to prevent external intrusion, not to restrict movement of personnel presumed loyal through 14 years of service. The restricted files contained strategic planning documents, multi-year operational projections, philosophical treatises justifying Assassinorum doctrine. One document was titled Maintaining Civilization Through Selective Terror, a treatise on operational philosophy. It had been written by a Lord Commander of the Officio Assassinorum 300 years ago, updated and revised across 15 subsequent editions. The introduction stated its purpose clearly: to provide philosophical framework for understanding how the temples served the Imperium, not through responding to threats, but through creating threat perception that maintained obedience. The central argument was that humanity's survival required populations to live in existential fear, that this fear prevented the independent thought and social mobility that breeds heresy and rebellion. The Assassinorum's function was to be visible in invisibility, known in secrecy, a constant reminder that deviation from orthodoxy resulted in sudden death. The treatise contained case studies, planets where regular infiltrations and public executions had reduced civil unrest by 72% over 20-year periods. Subsectors where systematic elimination of ambitious leaders prevented political instability. Fleet commands where assassination of innovative tactical minds ensured standardized doctrine across all vessels. Each case study included statistical analysis demonstrating improved compliance, reduced resource expenditure on enforcement, more efficient tithe collection. The conclusion argued that these improvements justified the elimination of innocents, that the fear generated by killing occasional non-threats actually enhanced the system's effectiveness. I read that treatise 4 times, searching for sarcasm or irony, hoping for evidence that this represented theoretical exercise rather than operational doctrine. I found none. The writing was clinical, analytical, proud. It described a philosophy that viewed human beings as livestock requiring management through fear. It articulated a vision of civilization where justice existed only as performance, where the possibility of arbitrary death maintained order more effectively than consistent law. And it had been updated 15 times, revised and expanded by successive Lord Commanders, taught to senior personnel as foundational doctrine. The archive contained deployment projections showing implementation of this philosophy. 3-year cycles of increased assassination targeting on previously compliant worlds. Not because threats had emerged, but to remind populations that complacency was dangerous. The projections included expected casualties, calculated demographic impact, projected improvement in compliance rates. One projection targeted the subsector where I lived. Every 3 standard years, deployment frequency increased by 40% for 6-month periods. Targets were selected not by threat assessment, but by visibility, killing prominent citizens whose deaths would generate maximum fear. The document referred to this as systematic recalibration of population anxiety. I checked the dates against my processed confirmations. The pattern matched perfectly. Every 3 years, for 6 months, the confirmation dossiers increased dramatically. I had processed these spikes without question, assuming they represented periods of heightened heretical activity. I had never considered the alternative, that the Imperium deliberately murdered its own citizens to maintain fear. That my documentation enabled statistical terror. On the 39th day of the 4th month, Adept Krast summoned me to her office. She sat behind a desk of dark wood, her augmetic eye clicking as it processed data scrolling across internal displays, invisible to me. She let me stand for 90 seconds before speaking. Her voice was gentle, almost maternal. You have been accessing restricted files. Archivist Veil. I said nothing. There was nothing to say. The security logs would show exactly what I had examined. She continued. You have been reviewing case files during unauthorized hours. You have been removing documents from the archive without proper transfer authorization. You have been conducting independent research into operational methodologies without approval from supervisory personnel. These actions violate 14 separate regulations. I was maintaining quality assurance, I said. The lie felt thin even to me. Her human eye studied me while the augmetic processed information. You are troubled by what you have discovered. This is understandable. The work requires strong constitution. Most personnel experience crisis of faith during their service. It is part of the maturation process. The authorizations are falsified. The targets are innocent. The word innocent lacks meaning in our context. She spoke with the patience of a teacher addressing a slow student. Guilt and innocence are categories for judicial proceedings. We operate beyond such limitations. Our purpose is not justice but preservation. Preservation through murder. Preservation through necessity. Her tone remained calm, conversational. Archivist Veil, I have served the Officio Assassinorum for 47 years. I have processed 1,300,000 confirmation dossiers. I have documented the elimination of governors, generals, priests, merchants, artists, children. I have asked the same questions you are asking now. I have lain awake wondering if the targets were truly threats or convenient scapegoats. I have doubted. I have questioned. I have prayed for guidance and received only silence. She stood, walking to the window that overlooked the temple complex. The Imperium spans 1,000,000 worlds, 1,000,000, each containing billions of souls, each soul capable of heresy, of corruption, of decisions that cascade into sector-wide catastrophe. How do you govern such scale? How do you prevent collapse into the same barbarism that consumed Old Night? How do you maintain order when any single world possesses sufficient resources to believe itself independent? Through law, I said. Through justice. Law scales poorly. Justice is luxury civilizations on the brink of extinction cannot afford. She turned to face me. The Imperium survives through fear. Fear of the alien. Fear of the mutant. Fear of the heretic. But also fear of authority itself. Fear that deviation from orthodoxy results in death. This fear is manufactured intentionally. It is cultivated like crops, harvested like resources, deployed like weapons. Then we are no better than the enemies we claim to fight. We are better because we survive. That is the only metric that matters. The Imperium endures because we are willing to do what survival requires. The Xenos would consume us. The warp would corrupt us. Our own nature would fragment us into warring kingdoms too weak to resist either threat. The alternative to our methods is extinction. I choose this horror over that oblivion. I wanted to argue, to present evidence of innocent victims, to force her to acknowledge the arbitrariness of so many eliminations. But I saw in her human eye what her augmetic could not display. She knew. She had always known. The difference between us was not knowledge but acceptance. I do not sleep well, she said quietly. I have not slept well for 47 years. I take Medicae, prescribed soporifics that provide 4 hours of chemically induced unconsciousness. I wake from nightmares I cannot remember. My hands shake when I sign documents authorizing deployment. I close my eyes before opening dossiers, praying this one will be different, knowing it will not be. I have questioned the morality of our work every day of my service. She returned to her desk, sitting with visible wariness. But I continue, because someone must be willing to carry this burden. Someone must be willing to maintain the system that preserves humanity, even when that system requires monstrous action. Someone must make the choice between one horror and countless horrors. I made that choice 47 years ago. I make it again each morning when I arrive at this office. What about the choice of the people we kill? My voice broke on the final word. They do not get to choose. Oh, no, they do not. That is the fundamental inequality of power. We choose who dies so that civilization survives. Is this just? No. Is this necessary? I believe so, though I am not certain. I have never been certain. But inaction is also a choice, and that choice is collapse. So I act, and I document, and I live with consequences. She pulled a data slate from her desk drawer, placing it between us. This is your service record. 14 years. 4,300,000 processed characters. Accuracy rating of 99.7%. 3 commendations. 0 disciplinary infractions until now. You have been exemplary servant to the temples and the Imperium. The data slate displayed 2 options. I saw them without her needing to explain. You may continue your service with understanding of its true nature. You will be promoted to senior archivist. Your clearance will expand. Your compensation will increase. You will have access to strategic planning and operational design. You will help determine which worlds receive increased deployment, which populations require anxiety recalibration, which targets serve the philosophy of selective terror. You will become architect of the system rather than its documentarian. Her augmetic eye focused on my face with uncomfortable intensity. Or you may request transfer to alternative duties. Your knowledge makes you security risk. Transfer would require memory alteration followed by deployment as administrative servitor. Your skills would be preserved for the templates, but your consciousness would be reduced to task. Specific function. You would continue serving the Imperium without the burden of understanding what that service enables. I looked at the options displayed on the slate. Promotion or lobotomy, complicity or erasure, the choice between becoming monster or becoming machine. There is a third option, I said. Her human eye showed something that might have been sympathy. No, there is not. You cannot leave. You cannot speak of what you know. You cannot exist outside the system with the knowledge you have gained. I am sorry. These are the only paths available. I thought of the targets in the dossiers. The governor suspected of independence. The commander accused of cowardice. The researcher guilty of proximity. All had faced impossible choices. Continue serving the system that destroyed them, or resist and guarantee destruction. Most had served until the moment of their elimination. Some had resisted and died knowing they had chosen dignity over survival. I stood from my chair. I choose the third option. Adept Krast's expression shifted to resignation. You choose death then? I am truly sorry. You were excellent archivist. I was collaborator. I documented atrocity with precision and called it service. She reached for her desk's Vox grill, preparing to summon security. I spoke before she could activate it. I am going to the Administratum transmission hub. I am going to broadcast the restricted files to every terminal in this complex and every connected facility in the subsector. I am going to ensure that thousands of personnel see what we have been documenting. I will not survive this action, but neither will the comfortable ignorance that enables it. She lowered her hand from the Vox grill. They will kill you before you reach the hub. If you somehow succeed in broadcasting the files, they will classify it as data corruption and purge all recipients. Nothing will change. You will die having achieved nothing. I will die having tried. That is better than living as I have been. Her augmetic eye dimmed slightly, a gesture I had never seen before. When she spoke, her voice carried exhaustion that transcended individual wariness, the accumulated fatigue of 47 years bearing unbearable knowledge. I envy you, Archivist Vale. I envy your conviction. I wish I possessed such certainty that I was making the correct choice. But I do not. I have never been certain. I suspect I am participating in great evil. But I fear the greater evil of doing nothing and watching everything burn. You have clarity I will never possess. She did not stop me when I left her office. She did not activate the Vox grill. She sat at her desk with her head bowed. A woman who had chosen complicity over conscience 47 years ago and had lived with that choice every moment since. I walked through the archive for the final time. The cold felt different now, not preservative, but suffocating. The silence was not peaceful but oppressive, the quiet of buried secrets and documented atrocities. I passed servitors maintaining atmospheric systems, wondering which had been candidates, which had chosen lobotomy rather than resistance. I retrieved the data, wafers containing the restricted files from the hidden pocket in my robes where I had carried them for 3 days. I had known this moment was coming. I had prepared for it the way a prisoner prepares for execution, with grim acceptance and determination to meet death with dignity intact. The transmission hub occupied sub-level 9. Accessible through maintenance corridors, I had learned during 14 years of navigating the complex. I encountered 2 security patrols during the descent. Neither stopped me. My credentials remained active. My face triggered no security alerts. The system trusted me until the moment I betrayed it. The hub contained dozens of transmission stations, each connected to the subsector's communication network. I chose a terminal in the northwest corner, away from the handful of night shift operators processing routine traffic. I inserted the first data wafer and began composing the transmission. I did not write lengthy explanation or philosophical justification. I simply attached the files with a single line of text. This is what we have become. The authorization protocols required senior administrative credentials. I used Adept Krast's codes, which she had provided during my last performance assessment when expanding my archive access. She had not revoked them. Perhaps she forgot. Perhaps she left them active deliberately. Perhaps 47 years of complicity had eroded her commitment to the system's protection. I initiated transmission. The files began broadcasting across the network, reaching terminals in the Assassinorum complex. The Planetary Administratum, the Munitorium Depot, the Ecclesiarchal Cathedral. Thousands of data slates would receive the documents. Thousands of personnel would see the operational philosophy, the deployment projections, the case studies documenting systematic terror. Some would dismiss it as malicious fabrication. Some would ignore it as beyond their concern. But some would read and understand and carry that understanding forward. I finished transmission and waited. The hub's doors remained closed. No alarms sounded. The night shift operators continued processing their routine traffic, unaware of what I had done. The quiet felt surreal, anticlimactic. I had expected immediate response, security teams breaching the doors, lass fire and screaming. Instead, nothing. Just the soft hum of data, processing equipment, and the distant sound of atmospheric circulation. 23 minutes after transmission completion, Adept Krast entered the hub alone. She walked to my terminal with slow, measured steps. Her augmetic eye was dark, deactivated. She carried a las pistol in her right hand, held at her side without aggression or threat display. "The transmission has been intercepted," she said. Approximately 7% reached external terminals before countermeasures activated. Roughly 4,000 individuals received partial or complete file access. This will complicate operations for several years, but will not fundamentally alter the system. 4,000 is more than 0.
Yes!
She raised the las pistol, aiming with steady hands. "You forced this choice upon me." "I am sorry." I met her gaze without fear. Fear had left me during the descent to the hub, replaced by calm acceptance. You have made this choice every day for 47 years. This is merely the first time you have faced your victim directly. Her hand trembled. The tremor lasted 3 seconds before she steadied it through visible effort. I have ordered 617 terminations during my tenure, each signed with my authorization, each approved through my administrative function. You are correct. This is merely the first time I must do the work myself rather than delegate it to assets. Will you sleep better after? I asked without cruelty, genuine curiosity. No, I will sleep worse, if I sleep at all. She adjusted her aim, centering on my chest, for what small consolation it provides. You were correct in your assessment. Many of the targets were innocent. Many died for convenience or institutional protection. The system operates through selective terror and arbitrary enforcement. You understood this more quickly than most. Your 14 years of service were complicity in organized atrocity. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve honesty in your final moments. Because I am tired of lies. Because 47 years of rationalizing horror has exhausted me beyond measure. Her voice cracked. Because if someone is going to die for revealing truth, they should die knowing they were right. Thank you, I said, and meant it. She fired 3 times. Center mass, professional grouping. I felt impact before pain. The sensation of massive force driving through flesh and bone. I fell backward, the terminal's edge catching my shoulder as I collapsed. The hub's ceiling tiles came into focus, stark white panels reflecting cold luminator light. Blood spread beneath me, warm against the facility's perpetual chill. My breath came in shallow gasps, each one more difficult than the last. Adept Krast knelt beside me. Her augmetic eye remained dark, but her human eye was wet. I will report this as security breach. A lone archivist experiencing mental breakdown attempted to steal and transmit classified materials. He was terminated during apprehension. His actions will be classified as psychological failure rather than principled resistance. Your death will not become inspiration for others. Better, I whispered through blood, than living as I was. Yes, she agreed. Better than living as I am. She pressed the last pistol against her temple. I saw the calculation in her human eye, the sudden recognition that she had reached the limit of what she could carry. 47 years of signing authorizations, processing confirmations, documenting elimination of people who might have been innocent. 47 years of choosing complicity over conscience. She had maintained that choice through rationalization, through philosophy, through belief that greater evil was being prevented. But executing me directly had breached whatever psychological barrier had preserved her functionality. She had become the system she served, eliminating an inconvenient truth with her own hands. Do not, I said. It hurt to speak. Each word required breath I could not afford. Someone must remember, must carry forward. Her hand shook. The last pistol pressed harder against her temple. I am too tired. I have been tired for decades. I want to stop. Then stop serving them. Start documenting what they do. You have access. You have knowledge. Use it. To what purpose? The system will continue regardless. 4,000 received the files. I reminded her. Blood filled my mouth. I swallowed and continued. Some will ignore. Some will forget. Some will understand. Small percentage. But percentage multiplied across millions becomes significant. You said it yourself. This will complicate operations. Complication creates opportunity for change. The last pistol lowered slightly. You are knave. The Imperium is too large, too entrenched. Individual resistance achieves nothing. I achieved this conversation, this moment, your doubt. The hub was growing dark at the edges. I was dying faster than I had anticipated. You can achieve more. You have survived within the system. You can subvert from inside. 4,000 became aware through one transmission. You could create thousands more. They would kill me. Yes, eventually, but not immediately. You are valued administrator. Trusted personnel. You have years potentially. Use them better than you have. She lowered the last pistol completely. Her human eye closed. When she opened it, something had shifted in her expression. Not hope, exactly. Resignation of a different type. I do not know if I possess the strength. Neither did I. Until I did. I died approximately 40 seconds later, drowning in my own blood while Adept Krast held my hand. Her augmetic eye remained dark throughout. Her human eye never stopped producing tears. I am dead now. I have been dead for 17 hours as of this recording. I exist only as testimony, as words preserved in data, format, as warning and witness statement. Adept Krast kept her word. She is documenting what I cannot. She is using her position, her access, her trusted status to create copies of operational philosophies, deployment projections, case studies showing systematic elimination of innocents. She is distributing these documents slowly, carefully, creating breadcrumb trails that lead investigators toward truth. She will likely die for this action. The Assassinorum does not tolerate internal dissent, but she has survived 47 years within their system. She knows their methods, their blind spots, their assumptions. She may survive long enough to spread significant corruption of their operational security. Or she may be discovered tomorrow and executed like I was. Either outcome is better than continuing as she had been. If you are reading this, you are either investigator following the trail she has created, or random personnel who discovered these files through accident. Either way, you now possess knowledge that will complicate your existence. You cannot unknow what you have learned. You cannot return to comfortable ignorance. The Imperium operates through selective terror. The Officio Assassinorum eliminates targets based on institutional convenience, deploying assets to maintain population fear rather than responding to actual threats. The authorization protocols are theater. The oversight mechanisms are performance. The system is designed to function exactly as I have described. This is not corruption. This is not aberration. This is intentional policy implemented across centuries, refined through iteration, justified through philosophical treatises taught to senior personnel. You now face the same choice I faced. You can accept this knowledge and continue serving the system with understanding of its true nature. You can request memory alteration and serve without burden of consciousness. Or you can resist and guarantee your destruction. I cannot tell you which choice is correct. I made mine based on personal conscience, moral conviction that participating in systematic murder was worse than dying in resistance. But I am not you. Your circumstances differ. Your responsibilities differ. Your capacity for complicity or resistance differs. Only you can determine what cost is too high for survival, what compromise erodes humanity beyond recovery, what evil is acceptable in service of perceived greater good. What I can tell you is this: 4,000 personnel received my transmission. A percentage of those will act on that knowledge. Some will resist overtly and die as I did. Some will resist covertly and survive longer than I did. Some will become internal saboteurs, corrupting the system from within. The percentage will be small. Most will choose ignorance, complicity, or rationalization, but the percentage exists. You are part of that percentage now. The Imperium teaches that humanity stands at the brink of extinction, that only ruthless action preserves our species, that mercy is luxury we cannot afford. This may be true. The galaxy contains horrors beyond human comprehension. The threats are real. The enemies are innumerable. Survival requires terrible choices and monstrous actions. But selective terror against our own populations is not survival necessity. Eliminating innocents to maintain fear is not strategic requirement. Systematic elimination of questioning voices is not preservation, but stagnation. The Imperium has confused security with control, protection with domination, survival with the prevention of all change. It has become the very tyranny it claims to fight, the oppression that crushes human potential it supposedly defends. I do not know what better system would look like. I do not know if humanity can survive without the Imperium's brutal methods. I do not know if my resistance served any purpose beyond salving my own conscience. These are questions without answers, problems without solutions, choices between different horrors. What I know is that I made my choice with steady hands. I would not become what the system required. I would not document atrocity with precision and call it service. I would not spend 47 years rationalizing participation in organized murder. I chose death over complicity. I chose resistance over survival. I chose to preserve my humanity, even if preserving humanity writ large required its sacrifice. This is my testimony. This is my witness statement. This is my warning to those who follow. The Imperium demands your complicity in actions you may find unconscionable. It will offer you rationalization, philosophy, strategic necessity. It will present impossible choices and demand you make them. It will exhaust you with moral weight until accepting horror seems easier than fighting it. Do not accept easily. Do not comply without question. Do not assume that institutional authority implies moral righteousness. The emperor protects, the priests teach. But who protects us from those who claim to act in his name? Who questions those who eliminate questioning voices? Who holds accountable those who operate beyond accountability? You do. We do. Every individual who refuses to become mechanism of their own oppression. Every clerk who falsifies authorization dates to save targets. Every archivist who copies restricted files. Every adept who transmits truth instead of propaganda. Every person who chooses conscience over comfort. The Assassinorum infiltrates fortress worlds through polymorphine transformation, through biochemical augmentation, through exploiting trust and familiarity. But their greatest infiltration is ideological. They have convinced the Imperium that arbitrary murder serves preservation. They have normalized institutional terror. They have made complicity feel like loyalty and resistance feel like betrayal. I infiltrated their archive for 14 years, processed their confirmations, documented their eliminations. I believed I served the Emperor. I believed the targets were threats. I believed the system was just. My infiltration of their philosophy was more complete than any Callidus operative's physical transformation. But infiltration can flow both directions. If they can infiltrate our thoughts, we can infiltrate their institutions. If they can normalize horror, we can denormalize it. If they can corrupt from above, we can resist from below. This is how they infiltrate fortress worlds, through exploiting trust, through patient transformation, through becoming so familiar that questioning their presence feels like betraying yourself. This is how we resist, through documentation, through testimony, through becoming so stubborn in conscience that complicity feels like betraying yourself. I was Theron Vale. I served as third archival administrator for the Callidus Temple Supply Annex for 14 years. I processed 4,300,000 characters, documenting the elimination of human beings, many of whom died for convenience rather than necessity. I was complicit before I was victim. I collaborated before I resisted. I believed before I understood. My final understanding is this: the Imperium will endure or fall based not on the strength of its weapons, but on the conscience of its servants. Every person who refuses to become mechanism of oppression weakens the machinery of control. every act of documentation, every transmitted file, every moment of resistance contributes to possibility of change. The change may not come in my lifetime. It did not come at all for me. I died 17 hours ago in a transmission hub, bleeding out while trying to ensure 4,000 people learned truth I wish I had never discovered. But those 4,000 now carry that truth forward. Some will bury it. Some will deny it. Some will act on it. The percentage that acts will inspire others. The effect cascades across years, decades, centuries. This is my contribution to that cascade, this testimony, this witness statement, this record of one archivist who chose death over complicity, who preferred annihilation to collaboration, who maintained humanity, even while documenting its systematic destruction. If you are reading this, you are now part of the cascade. What you do with this knowledge is your choice. I cannot make it for you. I can only tell you what I learned through my transformation from faith to comprehension. The certainty you feel about serving righteous system is certainty I felt. The rationalization you construct is rationalization I constructed. The complicity you accept is complicity I accepted, until the moment I did not accept it anymore. That moment is available to you, not immediately, not without cost, but available nonetheless. The moment when you decide that participation in horror is worse than dying in resistance. The moment when conscience overcomes fear. The moment when you stop being mechanism and become human again. I do not know if this testimony will reach anyone. Adeptcraft may be discovered and terminated before distributing my words. The files may be classified and purged. This entire effort may achieve nothing except giving me comfort in my final moments. But I am dead now regardless. My comfort is irrelevant. What matters is the possibility. The slim chance that someone reads these words and makes different choice than I made for 14 years. The hope that documentation of one person's transformation from faith to comprehension to consequence might spare others the same moral trajectory. The Assassinorum will continue their operations. The authorization protocols will remain theater. The targets will die with the same bureaucratic precision. The Imperium will endure through selective terror and systematic elimination of questioning voices. But within that enduring structure, individuals face daily choices. Process the confirmation or flag the discrepancy. Sign the authorization or request additional evidence. Deploy the asset or question the targeting criteria. Each choice seems insignificant. Each choice feels like mere duty. Each choice compounds into participation in atrocity. I made those choices 4,300,000 times. I processed confirmations with pride in my accuracy. I verified authorizations with faith in institutional righteousness. I documented elimination of human beings with certainty that I served the Emperor's will. I was wrong about everything except the mechanics. The mechanics were exactly as I documented them. But the meaning, the purpose, the moral weight of what I documented was inverted from what I believed. This is my warning. This is my testimony. This is my final service. The Emperor protects, the priests teach. But I learned that we must protect each other from those who claim to serve him. The system requires your complicity. Choose carefully. Live with your choices. Die with your conscience intact if you can. I am Theron Vale. I was third archival administrator for the Callidus Temple Supply Annex. I served for 14 years before I understood what I served. I resisted for 17 hours before I died. The ratio is not favorable, but the 17 hours are mine, untainted by complicity, preserved in conscience. That is all I can claim. That is enough. May the Emperor have mercy on us all. We will receive none from those who rule in his name. This testimony is concluded. This witness statement is complete. This infiltration of institutional memory is finished. 4,000 personnel received the first transmission. You are reading the second. How many will read the third? How many will act? How many will choose resistance over complicity? I do not know. I will never know. I am dead, but I died hoping the answer was more than zero. Let it be more than zero, please. Let it be more than zero. Document ends. Timestamp. Corrupted. Origin deleted. Author deceased. Classification pending review. Adept Helena Krast, Second Archival Administrator. Callidus Temple Supply Annex. Requests this testimony be preserved in restricted archives under Research Protocol 17, subsection. Personnel Psychological Breakdown Analysis. Request approved. Document filed. Distribution prohibited. Access requires Divisio Immorales authorization. Addendum recorded 3 days after initial filing. Adept Helena Krast terminated for security breach. Investigation revealed systematic distribution of classified materials across 17 months following the Vale incident. Estimated recipient count 240, 7,000 personnel across 12 subsectors. Countermeasures implemented. Damage assessment moderate, operational complication. Long-term impact minimal. System integrity preserved. Addendum to addendum. Recorded 4 years after initial filing, regional compliance rates decreased by 3% across targeted subsectors. Deployment operations delayed in 17 cases due to personnel refusal or hesitation. 4 assassination attempts against Divisio Immorales personnel by operatives who accessed distributed materials. Investigation into ideological corruption ongoing. Philosophical treatises updated to address emerging resistance patterns. Selective termination of questioning personnel increased to compensate for documented knowledge proliferation. The system endures. The work continues. The Emperor protects. But the percentage is no longer zero.